Have you ever looked at your life and wondered, why do I keep attracting the wrong people? The ones who drain your energy, manipulate your emotions, and leave you questioning your own worth. It's like a pattern you can't escape, a cycle that keeps pulling you back in. You try to be kind, patient, understanding, yet somehow it always ends the same. You're left carrying the weight, while they walk away untouched. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispers, maybe it's me, that doubt, that ache, that need to be chosen. It's not weakness. It's a sign that something inside you has been ignored for too long. Most people never pause long enough to realize this truth. Toxic people don't just show up, they're drawn in. Not because you're flawed, but because there's something in your energy that speaks to them. It's not what you say, it's not what you want, it's what you allow. The way you were taught to love, to endure, to earn attention. Those lessons shaped your boundaries. They carved patterns into your life that feel normal, even when they're painful. And until you become aware of those patterns, they will keep choosing your relationships for you. This isn't about blame, it's about power. The power to finally understand what's really happening beneath the surface. Toxic people are opportunists. They sense where the lines are blurred. They look for kindness without limits, empathy without protection, and loyalty without self-respect. And if you've been conditioned to believe that love means sacrifice, then you've likely been a magnet for those who take more than they give. But what if this pattern isn't permanent? What if, by shifting just one thing, your awareness, you could stop it cold? Awareness changes everything. It's the moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what am I allowing? It's the moment you look inward, not to criticize, but to reclaim your power. Because when you understand why the pattern exists, you finally have a chance to break it. You begin to see how your energy speaks louder than your words. You notice the moments when you stay silent, when you shrink, when you give one more chance, even though your gut is screaming. And in that awareness, you begin to make new choices. Stay with this journey, because the reward is everything. When you change your energy, you change your relationships. When you stop tolerating what hurts you, you stop attracting those who feed on your silence. The world doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you're aligned with. And when you start aligning with peace, self-worth, and clarity, the toxic voices fade. They can't thrive where you're headed. So if you're tired of the cycle, if you're ready to stop feeling like you're never enough, keep watching. The path forward isn't just about avoiding toxic people. It's about becoming someone who no longer makes space for them. And that starts now. When you begin to understand the energy you give off, you also begin to see how others respond to it. People don't just respond to your words, they respond to your presence, your patterns, your silences. They feel what you believe about yourself, even when you try to hide it. If you walk into a room unsure of your worth, it shows. If you constantly try to please others to avoid conflict, they sense it. If you fear being alone more than being mistreated, they exploit it. And this isn't just chance. It's the unconscious agreement between two energies, one willing to take and one afraid to say no. Toxic people are not confused. They are strategic. They learn your buttons. They test your limits. They wait to see how much you're willing to bend, and then they keep pushing. It doesn't start with something big. It starts small. A dismissive comment, a broken promise, a disrespectful tone. And when you stay quiet, they learn something crucial. Your silence is permission. Every time you tolerate what makes you uncomfortable, every time you excuse behavior that feels wrong, you reinforce a message you may not even realize you're sending. I will accept less than I deserve if it means I won't be abandoned. But what if you stopped sending that message? What if you stopped bending to be accepted and started standing to be respected? That shift, quiet and internal, changes everything, because people can only meet you at the level you meet yourself. If you're unsure of your worth, you attract those who confirm that doubt. But if you stand firm in your value, you repel anything that threatens it. And it's not about becoming aggressive, it's about becoming grounded, certain, clear. The mirror doesn't lie. Every relationship reflects back something about who you are and what you believe. When you constantly find yourself entangled with those who belittle, betray, or manipulate, it's not a signal to hate yourself. It's a signal to wake up. To ask yourself what you've been tolerating in silence. To notice where your standards have slipped because you were afraid of being seen as too much or too sensitive or not easygoing enough. But here's the truth. Your peace is not negotiable. Your values are not optional. And your voice is not too loud. It's the boundary that keeps the wrong people out. You don't change your life by fixing others. You change it by fixing the parts of you that allowed them to stay. When you step out of denial and into awareness, you stop blaming them and start reclaiming yourself. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee. That's the beginning of transformation. That's the power of truth. And if you've been waiting for someone to save you, it's time to realize no one is coming. Because the person you've been waiting for is the stronger, wiser version of you that's already waking up. And she's not afraid anymore. The moment you stop apologizing for having standards, you start protecting your peace. And that's where real strength begins, not in controlling others, but in controlling access to you. When you stop making excuses for people who constantly cross the line, you begin to redefine what love, respect, and connection should actually feel like. It's not about building walls, it's about building gates. You get to decide who enters, how long they stay, and under what conditions. This is your life, your energy, your space. You don't owe anyone unrestricted access just because they want it. People who thrive on control, manipulation, or emotional games will call your boundaries selfish. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, or difficult. That's not a reflection of your truth. It's a reaction to losing control over you. When you start prioritizing your emotional health, toxic people panic. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the dynamic they depended on is shifting. You're no longer shrinking to fit their comfort. You're expanding into your own power. That's not something they can handle. But don't let their discomfort stop your growth. The fear of disappointing others has kept you in survival mode for too long. You've swallowed words you needed to say. You've stayed in places that drained you. You've chosen silence over truth, just to keep the peace that was never real to begin with. But real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from living in alignment with who you really are. And sometimes that means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means losing people who only love the version of you that didn't have boundaries. Healing starts when you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. You don't need permission to evolve. You don't need validation to protect your energy. You don't need agreement to walk away from what no longer serves you. The more you honor your own needs, the more clarity you gain about who actually belongs in your life. Some connections are only meant to teach you what you never want again. And that's a lesson you carry forward with power, not pain. The most powerful version of you is the one who finally realizes that peace is a choice. That love should never cost you your voice. That kindness doesn't mean self-abandonment. You're allowed to be soft and strong, kind and clear, giving and guarded. It's not either or, it's balance. And that balance is the magnet that attracts people who respect, support, and celebrate the real you. Every time you raise your standards, you take one step closer to the life you truly deserve. Not the life built on fear and compromise, but the one built on clarity, courage, and truth. Toxic people lose their grip when you stop needing their approval. And when you no longer chase validation, you begin to attract peace. This is the shift. This is your power. And once you claim it, nothing and no one can take it from you. There comes a moment when you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. That moment is everything. It's when the begging ends, the chasing stops, and the silence breaks. It's when you look in the mirror and decide that being loved by others is not worth losing love for yourself. Because no matter how many times you try to prove your worth to someone who refuses to see it, you will always end up empty. The truth is, the people who truly value you will never make you feel like you have to earn their basic respect. You weren't born to shrink. You weren't made to bend so far you forget what it feels like to stand tall. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love meant proving, pleasing, enduring. But that version of love was built on survival, not truth. And now, it's time to unlearn it. It's time to rewrite the rules you've been living by. No more accepting breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole table. No more staying silent when your soul is screaming. No more ignoring red flags just because you're afraid to start over. There is nothing more painful than staying stuck in a pattern that keeps killing your spirit a little more each day. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not the problem for wanting loyalty, honesty, depth. The real problem is thinking that you have to lower your standards to keep someone who was never meant to stay. Let that go. Let the guilt go. Let the shame go. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone a second chance at the cost of your own healing. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means releasing the burden and finally choosing freedom over familiarity. You will feel a shift the moment you start saying no without explaining. The moment you stop apologizing for your growth. The moment you realize that boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to a better life. And yes, it will be uncomfortable. You might feel lonely. You might even grieve the version of yourself that always tried to make it work. But that grief is sacred. It means you're shedding the layers that no longer belong to the person you're becoming. And that version of you, clear, grounded, whole, is worth everything. The most powerful energy you can carry is peace. Not the kind that comes from pleasing everyone around you, but the kind that comes from finally honoring what your soul has known all along. You don't attract toxic people because you're broken. You attract them when you're disconnected from your worth. Reconnect. Return to yourself. Rebuild the standards that reflect who you truly are. And watch how the energy around you begins to shift. This is how you stop the cycle. This is how you stop inviting pain into your life. Not by fighting harder for others, but by finally fighting for yourself. There is a certain power that comes with emotional clarity, the moment you realize that not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. The clearer you become about who you are and what you need, the faster you see through the noise. Toxic people don't just show up. They're allowed in, not because you are weak, but because you've been conditioned to think that love must be earned even at the expense of your peace. That belief has cost you more than you know: time, energy, self-respect. But now that cost is no longer acceptable. You've reached a point where ignoring your truth hurts more than confronting it. You're done pretending to be okay with things that disturb your spirit. You're done laughing at jokes that aren't funny, accepting apologies that are just empty words, and carrying relationships that make you feel heavy instead of whole. You've outgrown the role of the fixer, the pleaser, the one who keeps everything together while slowly falling apart inside. That version of you was never the real you. It was a survival mask, and you're ready to take it off. It's not your job to heal people who refuse to grow. It's not your responsibility to carry others at the expense of yourself. You can hold compassion and still hold boundaries. You can be understanding and still be unavailable to chaos. That's not being cold, that's being conscious. And the more conscious you become, the less tolerance you have for anything that feels like emotional confusion. You no longer crave connection just for the sake of not being alone. You crave depth. You crave honesty. You crave people who meet you with clarity, not mind games. Healing doesn't mean you become invincible to pain. It means you become immune to patterns. You start to notice the early signs, the subtle shifts, the quiet red flags. You no longer ignore them, hoping for the best. You acknowledge them and act. You protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. And the moment you stop explaining your worth to those who never intended to value it, everything changes. You begin to attract what mirrors your growth. You stop walking on eggshells. You start walking in truth. You are not defined by the pain you tolerated. You are defined by the strength it took to finally walk away. That choice, the choice to choose yourself, is the most radical act of love you will ever make. It sends a signal not just to the world, but to your own soul, that you are no longer willing to sacrifice your peace for temporary connection. This is not selfishness. This is self-respect. And the more you root into it, the more magnetic you become to the life you deserve. Not because you chased it, but because you finally became someone who would never again settle for less. When you finally realize that peace is more valuable than approval, everything begins to align. You stop performing. You stop bending. You stop betraying yourself just to be accepted, because the truth is, real acceptance doesn't require you to shrink. It invites you to expand. And anyone who makes you feel like you're too much, too intense, too emotional, is simply too limited to hold the depth of your truth. That's not your failure. That's your freedom. The more you trust that, the less you tolerate anything that asks you to dim your light to make others feel comfortable in your presence. Toxic people thrive in your self-doubt. They sense your need to be needed and exploit it. They aren't drawn to your wounds by accident. They are drawn to your willingness to put yourself second. But you're no longer that version of yourself. You've learned that being selfless doesn't mean being self-destructive. You've learned that love isn't proven through pain. You've learned that loyalty should never require silence in the face of disrespect. And most importantly, you've learned that you are allowed to walk away from anything that poisons your peace, no matter how long you've tolerated it. There is nothing noble about staying in spaces where your spirit is starving. Nothing powerful about holding on to people who drain you. You are not weak for wanting more. You are awake. You are seeing clearly now. The patterns, the manipulation, the subtle ways you've been made to feel small. And awareness is power. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the weight of your truth, you can't pretend it doesn't exist. It becomes louder than your fear, stronger than your guilt, brighter than your doubt. This is where real change begins, not with blame, but with responsibility. Not pointing fingers, but reclaiming your energy. You stop asking why others won't treat you better, and start asking why you keep giving them the chance. You stop expecting others to see your value and start living like you know it for yourself. That shift is what ends the cycle. That clarity is what cuts the cord. And from that moment forward, you stop chasing what was never meant to be yours and start building the life you were always meant to claim. You no longer wait for others to give you permission to rise. You rise anyway. You rise because you're tired of settling. You rise because your soul is suffocating in spaces you've outgrown. You rise because you finally understand that your future can't begin until you stop reliving the pasts. So you release. You let go, not with bitterness, but with power. You don't owe your pain a home in your heart anymore. What you owe yourself now is peace. And that peace begins the moment you decide you're done sacrificing your worth for people who were never capable of seeing it. Let them go. Choose yourself. The real you is waiting. You cannot evolve while clinging to what broke you. The longer you hold on to people who thrive on your insecurity, the longer you delay the life that's waiting for you. Growth demands a cost. And sometimes that cost is walking away from people you thought you couldn't live without. But if staying means constantly silencing your needs, questioning your worth, or carrying pain just to keep the peace, then it isn't connection, it's captivity. And no matter how familiar it feels, it is not love. Love doesn't leave you drained. Love doesn't confuse you. Love doesn't make you doubt who you are every time you speak your truth. You were not created to be stuck in survival mode. You were meant to thrive. But thriving requires you to be intentional with what you allow into your space. Energy is not invisible. It's contagious. And when you consistently allow toxic energy around you, it begins to distort your identity. You start believing that chaos is normal. That walking on eggshells is just how relationships work. That being used is just the price you pay for being needed. But these are lies rooted in fear. And fear will keep you living a life that's much smaller than what you're capable of. Fear will convince you to stay in pain just because it's predictable. But you didn't come this far just to stay stuck. You don't rise by chance. You rise by choice. Every time you set a boundary, you choose yourself. Every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what heals you. Every time you let go of someone who takes more than they give, you make room for something better. It's not easy. It's not painless. But it is necessary, because your healing will never begin while you're still entertaining the very energy that caused the wound. You cannot fix someone by breaking yourself. You cannot find peace by tolerating chaos. And you cannot become whole by remaining in the presence of people who benefit from your brokenness. You are not difficult for asking for consistency. You are not demanding for needing honesty. You are not high maintenance for refusing to settle for one-sided love. Stop apologizing for wanting more. Stop explaining your standards to people who never had any intention of meeting them. The right people won't need to be convinced. They'll understand your boundaries because they live by their own. They'll value your energy because they value themselves, and they will never see your strength as a threat. You are allowed to choose peace over pressure, clarity over confusion, depth over surface, and you're allowed to do it unapologetically, because this is your life, not theirs, your path. Not their expectations. And when you start honoring that, when you start acting like your energy is sacred, everything around you shifts. Not because the world changed, but because you finally did. You stopped shrinking. You stopped settling. And you finally stood in the truth of who you are. That is where your freedom begins. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you reinforce, and what you let slide. Every time you tolerate disrespect, every time you make excuses for someone's cruelty, you send a silent message that your boundaries are negotiable. And the longer you compromise your standards for temporary connection, the more you betray the part of you that's craving something real, something honest, something rooted in mutual respect, not manipulation. You weren't meant to beg for bare minimums. You weren't made to keep explaining the basics of decency to people who benefit from your confusion. Your worth is not a debate. It is a fact. And the moment you start treating it that way, everything begins to shift. You don't attract toxic people because you're broken. You attract them when you ignore your intuition. That quiet voice that warns you, that nudges you, that tells you when something feels off. But you've been taught to second-guess it, to label it as overthinking, to silence it with logic or fear. And toxic people love that. They thrive in the space between your doubt and your silence. They know if they keep you uncertain, they can keep you around, but deep down you always knew. You felt it in your body, in your exhaustion, in your uneasiness, in the way your energy shifted whenever they were near. That's your truth speaking, and it's time to start listening. You're not too sensitive. You're not too emotional. You're not overreacting. You're finally responding to what your soul has been screaming for years. You're done normalizing dysfunction. Done dressing up emotional abuse as tough love. Done pretending that being needed is the same as being loved. You now understand that love isn't something that drains you. It's something that restores you. It's not supposed to feel like a battlefield. It's supposed to feel like home. Healing means making hard decisions. It means choosing solitude over fake connection. It means letting go of the version of you who tolerated pain just to feel wanted. That version was surviving. But you're no longer here to survive. You're here to thrive. And thriving starts with alignment. When your actions match your values. When your boundaries match your worth. When your presence reflects your power. You become magnetic, not because you chase validation, but because you stop accepting anything that doesn't serve your growth. There is a quiet strength in no longer reacting, in no longer defending yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, in no longer explaining your boundaries like they require permission. That silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the clarity that comes from healing. It's the peace that comes when you finally realize your energy is a privilege, not a consolation prize. The moment you begin honoring yourself at that level, you stop attracting people who treat you like you're disposable. And you start drawing in people who recognize what you've always carried. Value, depth, and power that never needed validation. There comes a moment when you must stop asking why people hurt you and start asking why you allowed it more than once. That's not about blame. That's about reclaiming your power. Because healing doesn't just mean feeling better, it means seeing clearer. It means noticing the patterns, the behaviors, the cycles you kept reliving and finally deciding to break them. The truth is, toxic people don't just slip into your life. They stay because, somewhere deep inside, part of you believed that you had to earn love through suffering. That belief is the real poison, and until you release it, you'll keep calling pain by the name of love. You don't have to prove your worth to be loved. You don't have to perform perfection to be safe. You don't have to fix people so they'll stay. Your job is not to rescue others at the expense of yourself. Your job is to love from overflow, not emptiness. But if you were raised to please, raised to keep peace at any cost, raised to be small so others could feel big, then you were trained to abandon yourself. And that's the wound. That's what toxic people feed on. Your silence, your guilt, your need to be needed. They don't see your heart, they see your habit of self-betrayal. But the moment you choose yourself, the spell breaks, the illusion ends. And the power returns to where it always belonged, within you. You don't owe anyone your pain just because they gave you attention. You don't have to stay in relationships that confuse you just because you once felt seen. You are not a mirror for broken people to see themselves. You are not a landing place for others to unload their chaos. You are a full, sacred being with the right to walk away from anything that poisons your peace. That kind of decision doesn't come from ego. It comes from wisdom. The wisdom that knows connection without respect is manipulation in disguise. The wisdom that knows your energy is not meant to be wasted on proving your value to those who never intended to honor it. Letting go is not weakness. It's strength refined by experience. It's the moment you stop explaining your pain and start embodying your worth. You stop trying to convince people to treat you better and start surrounding yourself with people who already know how. You stop begging for crumbs and start expecting consistency. You stop defending your standards and start protecting your peace. That's when healing becomes your new normal. That's when freedom takes root. And that's when toxic people stop showing up. Not because they disappeared, but because they no longer see an opening. When you respect yourself on a soul level, the game changes. You move differently, you speak differently, you love differently, and most of all, you choose differently. Not out of fear, but from clarity. Not from scarcity, but from alignment. And that shift becomes the quiet revolution that transforms everything. Your energy is the most valuable currency you have. Every thought, every feeling, every word you speak sends out vibrations into the world, shaping the reality you live in. Toxic people are drawn not just to what they can take, but to what you unknowingly offer. A vulnerability, a gap in your self-respect, a place where your boundaries feel thin and uncertain. When you're unclear about your value, that energy becomes a beacon. It signals that you're open to compromise, confusion, and chaos. But what if you chose to guard your energy as fiercely as you protect your dreams? What if you stopped giving away your power for the illusion of connection? That shift alone can change everything. It begins with awareness. Becoming conscious of how you feel in the presence of others is not weakness, it's wisdom. Your body knows before your mind does. Notice the subtle tension when someone speaks harshly or dismisses your feelings. Feel the heaviness that lingers after a toxic interaction. These aren't just discomforts to ignore, they are alerts guiding you to act. When you start listening to those signals, you no longer walk blindly into harmful situations. You stop assuming that discomfort is just part of being close to someone. You recognize it as a warning, a chance to protect yourself before damage occurs. Respecting your energy also means embracing the power of no. Saying no is not rejection, it is self-care. It is setting a boundary that says, I value my peace too much to sacrifice it. You do not owe explanations to anyone who demands your time, your attention, or your kindness at the cost of your well-being. Saying no is the ultimate act of self-love. It's the declaration that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. And when you practice this regularly, you build a shield so strong that toxic people can no longer penetrate your space. Choosing to protect your energy also means being selective with who you invite into your life. Not everyone deserves access to your world. Your heart is a sanctuary, and it must be treated as such. Surrounding yourself with people who uplift, inspire, and respect you is not selfish, it's necessary. These people reflect your highest self and remind you of your worth. They encourage growth, not dependence. They listen without judgment. They honor your boundaries. This kind of connection fuels your spirit and builds resilience against negativity. It rewires your brain to expect respect and kindness, making toxicity less likely to find a foothold. Your energy is your foundation. If it's shaky, everything built on it wobbles. But when it is solid, unwavering, and guarded fiercely, your entire world transforms. Toxic people lose their power because you no longer provide it. Your life becomes a place of healing, strength, and clarity. The peace you crave is no longer a distant dream, it's your new reality. And that, above all, is the freedom you were meant to claim. The way you communicate your needs sets the tone for every relationship you have. When you speak clearly, calmly, and firmly, you create a space where respect can grow. Silence or passive agreement only invites confusion and disrespect. Toxic people rely on your silence to control the narrative and shape your reality. But when you learn to voice your boundaries without fear, you take back control. You show the world that your feelings are valid, your needs are non-negotiable, and your peace is priceless. This clarity not only protects you, it empowers you. It tells toxic energy that you are no longer an easy target. Expressing yourself authentically is not about confrontation, it's about honesty. It means standing in your truth even when it feels uncomfortable. The discomfort is temporary, but the relief that follows is profound. When you stop hiding your emotions, you stop giving toxic people ammunition to manipulate you. They cannot twist your words or gaslight your feelings if you hold them firmly and openly. This kind of courage transforms your inner world and sends ripples outward, influencing how others perceive and treat you. Remember, setting boundaries is an act of love, not only for yourself but for those around you. It models what healthy connection looks like. It teaches people how to engage with you without crossing lines. Boundaries create a container where relationships can thrive without toxicity creeping in. When you respect your own limits, you create a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same. It is a powerful way to break generational cycles of abuse, neglect, and misunderstanding. Your boundaries become a blueprint for healthier interactions and deeper connections. It's important to realize that not everyone will respect your boundaries immediately. Some people will resist, some will test you. But their reaction is not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their own inability to respect limits. When someone pushes against your boundaries, it's an opportunity to reinforce them, not to weaken them. Your consistency builds your credibility and strengthens your inner resolve. The more you stand firm, the less room toxicity has to infiltrate your life. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates. You control who enters and who stays. You decide the terms of engagement. This is freedom in its purest form. It is the power to curate your environment, your relationships, and ultimately, your life. When you master this, you shift from being a passive recipient of others' actions to being an active creator of your experience. You reclaim your narrative. You stop attracting toxic people because you no longer give them a place to exist. You create space for those who value, uplift, and cherish the real you. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but every small step you take toward clear communication and firm boundaries moves you closer to lasting peace. Each time you speak your truth, you strengthen your voice. Each time you say no, you reinforce your power. And each time you protect your energy, you rebuild the foundation of a life free from toxicity and full of genuine connection. To break free from toxic cycles, you must first confront the inner fears that keep you trapped. Fear of loneliness, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. These shadows whisper lies that convince you to stay where you don't belong. They tell you it's safer to tolerate pain than to risk change. But safety without peace is a prison disguised as comfort. The moment you recognize that your greatest obstacle is not others, but your own fears, you open the door to real transformation. It takes courage to face those fears head-on, but doing so releases their grip and clears the path to freedom. Fear often thrives on uncertainty, making you doubt your ability to survive without toxic people in your life. You might question if you can find connection that doesn't drain you, or if you'll be left empty and alone. These doubts are echoes from past wounds, but they are not your truth. The truth is you are whole, worthy, and capable of creating relationships rooted in respect and love. Trusting yourself means choosing faith over fear, even when the future feels unclear. It means believing that your heart can heal, and that peace is not only possible, it is your birthright. Healing fear requires rewiring your mind to embrace discomfort as growth, not danger. When you lean into discomfort, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than the pain you once feared. You learn that boundaries may upset others, but they protect your soul. You discover that saying no is a gateway to saying yes to your worth. Each moment you choose self-respect over self-sacrifice, you weaken fear's power. And as fear loses control, your confidence and clarity rise, creating a magnetic force that repels toxicity. Fear of vulnerability can also keep you locked in toxic patterns. You may hide your true self to avoid judgment or rejection, believing that if people saw the real you, they would leave. But vulnerability is the birthplace of authentic connection. It takes bravery to show your scars, your needs, your limits. When you allow yourself to be seen fully, you invite others to meet you in truth. This honesty filters out those who cannot handle your light and attracts those who honor it. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the foundation of genuine relationships that nurture and heal. Letting go of fear means rewriting your story. Instead of being the person who attracts toxicity, you become the person who radiates strength, wisdom, and self-love. You transform from a victim of circumstances into an architect of your reality. This transformation reshapes how you view yourself and the people you allow into your life. Toxic individuals no longer fit your vision. They no longer align with your energy. You cultivate an environment where your soul can thrive, free from the shadows of fear. Your journey toward freedom is also a journey toward self-trust. Trust that you can handle the discomfort of change. Trust that you can find healthier connections. Trust that you deserve to live a life where your heart is safe. Fear may still visit, but it no longer rules. You stand tall in your truth, knowing that the power to stop attracting toxic people lies within you. And that power begins with courage. Understanding the power of your energy is essential to breaking free from toxic relationships. Every interaction you have, every thought you nurture, radiates an energy that attracts similar vibrations back to you. If your energy is scattered, drained, or rooted in self-doubt, you become a beacon for people who feed on those weaknesses. This cycle is unconscious but undeniable. When you begin to consciously cultivate strong, clear, and positive energy, you shift the magnetic field around you. Toxic people feel the change. They pull away because their energy clashes with your newfound strength. This is not about forcing anyone out. It's about becoming so authentically aligned with your true self that toxicity can no longer coexist in your presence. Your energy is not just how you feel on the surface. It is the deep signal you send through your words, your actions, and your presence. When you nurture self-respect, kindness, and assertiveness, you broadcast a message. I am worthy of respect, and I will not settle for less. This message acts like a filter, naturally repelling those who seek to diminish or control you. When your energy is clear and consistent, it also attracts people who uplift, inspire, and support your growth. This is the essence of building a healthy circle. energy that flows freely and mutually nourishes everyone involved. Cultivating this kind of energy requires daily intention. It means choosing thoughts and actions that align with your highest good, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. You must prioritize your well-being over the approval of others. This includes cutting ties with habits, environments, and relationships that drain your energy. It means guarding your time fiercely and refusing to expend emotional currency on people who do not respect your boundaries. Every choice you make sends a signal to the universe about what you accept in your life and what you refuse to tolerate. Your body and mind also reflect the energy you emit. When you nourish yourself through rest, movement, healthy nutrition, and mental clarity, you create a reservoir of strength that fuels your interactions. Toxic people thrive on exhaustion and confusion because those states weaken your defenses. By investing in your health and clarity, you reinforce your ability to stand firm. Your energy becomes a shield, not a sieve. You learn to discern between draining influences and nourishing connections with greater ease. This transformation is a reclaiming of your power. It is a declaration that you will no longer allow your life to be dictated by chaos or manipulation. You set a new standard for what you accept and what you reject. This process demands patience and persistence, but the payoff is profound. As you raise your energy, you raise your life. You create a reality where toxic people no longer have a foothold, and where your peace and joy become your natural state. Ultimately, understanding and managing your energy is not about controlling others, it's about mastering yourself. It is the foundation of true freedom. When you cultivate this energy with intention and respect, you stop attracting toxic people not by force, but by becoming someone they cannot touch. This is your power, waiting to be claimed. Your boundaries are the invisible lines that protect your soul. Without clear, firm boundaries, you leave yourself open to invasion, manipulation, and pain. Toxic people test these boundaries relentlessly, searching for weak spots they can exploit. When you allow others to cross your limits, you send a message that your well-being is negotiable. This invites more disrespect, more violation, and deeper wounds. But when you claim your boundaries with confidence and consistency, you create an unshakable foundation for your life. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out, they are gates that you control, deciding who is worthy to enter and how they are allowed to treat you. Setting boundaries requires clarity about what you value and what you will not accept. This clarity cannot come from others. It must come from deep within you. It means asking yourself hard questions. What behaviors drain my spirit? What actions break my trust? What feelings do I refuse to tolerate? Answering these questions honestly builds a personal code that guides your interactions. Once this code exists, boundaries become a natural expression of self-respect, not a reaction to fear or anger. You learn to say no without guilt, to protect your time and energy without apology, and to walk away from situations that threaten your peace. Many struggle with boundaries because they fear confrontation or rejection, but the truth is that weak boundaries invite far more suffering than the discomfort of standing firm. When you set boundaries, you teach others how to treat you, and you teach yourself what you deserve. It is a radical act of self-love to protect your emotional and mental space. It is also an act of courage, because it means risking disapproval in order to preserve your integrity. But the rewards are worth every moment of discomfort. Boundaries restore your power, build your confidence, and attract people who honor you for who you truly are. Boundaries are also about consistency. They are not one-time declarations but daily commitments. Toxic people will test your limits repeatedly, pushing to see if you will buckle. Every time you hold your ground, you reinforce your strength and deepen your resilience. You become less reactive, more centered, and increasingly capable of discerning genuine connection from manipulation. This consistent boundary setting rewires your brain, reducing anxiety and strengthening your sense of safety. You begin to feel secure in your own skin, knowing that your limits will be respected. It's important to understand that boundaries are flexible but non-negotiable. Flexibility means you can adjust them as you grow, learn, and evolve. Non-negotiable means you never sacrifice your core values or your peace for temporary comfort. This balance is the key to healthy relationships and emotional freedom. You become someone who attracts respect naturally because your boundaries create a space where kindness and honesty can flourish. When you fully embrace the power of boundaries, you stop attracting toxic people, not by pushing them away desperately, but by simply no longer fitting the patterns that drew them in. Your life becomes a reflection of the respect you demand and the love you give yourself. This is the transformation that changes everything. Your boundaries become your shield, your guide, and your declaration that you will no longer settle for less than you deserve. This is your power, firm, clear, and unstoppable. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. The first step to breaking free from toxic patterns is brutal honesty with yourself. It takes courage to look inward and recognize your own role in attracting harmful people. This isn't about blame or shame, it's about understanding. When you examine your past relationships and encounters, patterns emerge like footprints in the sand. They reveal the kind of energy you've been sending out, even if unconsciously. You may find that beneath the surface, old wounds or unmet needs have shaped how you relate to others. These wounds create invisible magnets for toxicity. Until you acknowledge this truth, the cycle will continue. Facing these patterns means confronting uncomfortable emotions. Fear, loneliness, insecurity. These feelings are not your enemies, they are signals calling for attention and care. When you hide or suppress them, you remain trapped in a loop of repetition. Instead, let these emotions guide you. Feel them fully, without judgment. This deep emotional work rewires your brain and body, allowing you to break free from old conditioning. As you do this, you build a new foundation of self-awareness and self-compassion. This foundation empowers you to choose differently and demand better. Understanding your role is not about blaming yourself for what others have done. Toxic people choose their actions, but your past experiences, beliefs, and vulnerabilities create openings for their manipulation. By shining a light on your own patterns, you take back the power that was lost. You move from being a passive victim to an active architect of your life. This shift changes everything. It's the moment when healing begins, not from outside forces, but from within your own heart and mind. This process requires patience and kindness toward yourself. Growth is never linear. You may stumble, slip back into old habits, or feel overwhelmed. This is normal. What matters is your willingness to keep going, to learn from setbacks, and to recommit to your healing journey. Every small step you take is progress. Each act of self-awareness weakens the grip of toxicity on your life. The more you understand yourself, the less likely you are to accept toxic behavior from others. Breaking free also means redefining your identity. Toxic people often latch onto those who doubt their worth or struggle to see their own value. As you uncover your true self beneath layers of hurt and doubt, your presence changes. You become a magnet for respect, kindness, and genuine connection. Your energy shifts from survival mode to thriving mode. This transformation makes toxic people uncomfortable. They no longer find fertile ground to grow their control. You have the power to rewrite your story. The choice to stop attracting toxicity begins with seeing your patterns clearly and embracing your healing with fierce determination. This is not a journey you take lightly. It is a commitment to yourself, your peace, and your future. You deserve relationships that nourish your soul, not ones that drain it. By choosing awareness over avoidance, courage over fear, you set yourself on a path to lasting transformation. This inner clarity is the key to freedom. It unlocks the door to healthier relationships and a life filled with respect and love. Your journey inward is your most powerful weapon against toxicity. It leads you to the strength, wisdom, and peace you've been searching for all along. You are not defined by the toxic people you've encountered. You are defined by the healing and growth you choose today. Your boundaries are the invisible walls that protect your peace. Without them, you are vulnerable to invasion by toxic energy disguised as love, friendship, or opportunity. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It is about holding space for your worth and safety. When you learn to say no to what harms you, you say yes to yourself. This act of self-respect rewires your brain to expect better treatment. It signals to the world that you will no longer tolerate anything less than what honors your soul. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear rejection or conflict, but living without boundaries creates a slow erosion of your spirit. Toxic individuals sense this weakness and exploit it. They push, manipulate, and drain your energy, leaving you depleted and confused. Boundaries are not walls to keep others out. They are bridges to authentic relationships built on mutual respect. When you establish clear limits, you invite healthier connections that align with your values and emotional needs. Creating boundaries begins with tuning into your feelings. Notice when something feels off, uncomfortable, or exhausting. These feelings are your internal compass guiding you toward what you must protect against. It's easy to ignore these signals, especially if you've been conditioned to prioritize others' comfort over your own. But Honoring your feelings is an act of radical self-care. It teaches you to trust yourself and your intuition. This trust becomes the foundation for all your future relationships. Communicating boundaries is an act of courage. It requires clear, honest, and assertive language. You don't need to justify or explain excessively. A simple, firm statement is powerful. This is not okay for me, or I need space to feel safe. The clarity in your voice becomes a shield against manipulation. When you consistently uphold your boundaries, even toxic people learn to respect you or step away. This consistency is your strongest ally in breaking toxic cycles. It's important to understand that setting boundaries will feel uncomfortable at first. Toxic people resist losing control and will test your limits. This is where resilience is forged. Each time you stand firm, you weaken their hold and strengthen your own resolve. This discomfort is temporary, the peace and freedom gained are permanent. Your inner world begins to reflect your outer boundaries, calmer, safer, and more aligned with your true self. Boundaries also help you reclaim your energy. Toxic people often drain your time, attention, and emotions without giving back. By setting limits, you conserve this precious energy for growth, joy, and meaningful connections. This shift transforms your relationships from sources of pain to sources of nourishment. You become a beacon for people who respect and cherish you, creating a protective circle around your life. The power of boundaries lies not just in protection, but in liberation. They free you from the chains of approval-seeking and people-pleasing. They allow you to prioritize your well-being without guilt or apology. This freedom is the foundation for a life where you attract love, respect, and kindness naturally. When you protect your peace fiercely, you send a clear message, you value yourself deeply, and will no longer accept anything less. Your boundaries are your declaration of self-love in action. They are a daily practice that shapes how the world interacts with you. Embracing this power changes the dynamics of every relationship in your life. You stop attracting toxicity because you no longer give it space to thrive. Instead, you create an environment where your soul can breathe, grow, and thrive in safety. This is your birthright. And it starts with the courage to say no and stand firm for yourself. Your self-worth is the foundation upon which your life is built. Without a strong sense of it, you become a magnet for toxicity. Toxic people feed on those who undervalue themselves, who tolerate disrespect and accept less than they deserve. When you lack belief in your own value, you unconsciously send signals to the world that you are available for mistreatment. This is not your fault. It is a survival mechanism that can be unlearned and replaced. Recognizing your intrinsic worth is the first step toward rewriting your relationship with yourself and everyone around you. Understanding your worth is not about arrogance or superiority. It is about embracing the simple truth that you matter just as much as anyone else. Your feelings, your needs, your dreams are valid. This acknowledgement creates a powerful shift in how you interact with the world. When you know you deserve kindness and respect, you stop settling for anything less. This shift is magnetic. It draws in people who reflect your value and pushes away those who seek to diminish it. The psychology behind self-worth reveals that it shapes your boundaries and choices. When your self-worth is low, you are more likely to accept toxic behavior because you believe you don't deserve better. You excuse manipulation, ignore red flags, and rationalize abuse. But as your self-worth grows, your tolerance shrinks. You begin to see toxic people clearly for who they are and what they do to you. This clarity is crucial because it frees you from denial and self-blame. You understand that their toxicity is a reflection of them, not your inadequacy. Rebuilding your self-worth requires intentional effort. It starts with how you speak to yourself internally. Negative self-talk is the silent thief of your confidence and strength. It reinforces the lies that keep you stuck in toxic cycles. Replacing these lies with affirmations of your value rewires your brain. Each time you remind yourself that you are worthy, you strengthen neural pathways that support self-love and resilience. This internal dialogue becomes a protective force that shields you from toxic influence. Self-worth also demands that you take ownership of your life. It means making decisions that align with your well-being, even when they are difficult. Choosing to walk away from toxic relationships is a profound act of self-respect. It shows that you value your peace above temporary comfort. This choice is not selfish, it is necessary. It creates space for growth, healing, and the authentic connections you deserve. Each decision to protect your worth rewrites your story and transforms your future. When you fully embrace your worth, you stop chasing approval. You no longer need others to validate your existence or happiness. This independence is a powerful deterrent to toxic people. They thrive on control, manipulation, and insecurity. When you are secure in your worth, you become immune to their tactics. You become the guardian of your own peace, and toxic people find no foothold in your life. Your self-worth is your most potent weapon against toxicity.